Alright, for the next few tutorials, we will be creating this scene here. Let me go ahead and play it. As you can see, I've got a rigid body attached to these crates here, and I'm shooting my laser. There it goes. Now you can see it, and it's hitting the crates. So let's begin. Alright, I've removed the first person controller and the weapon, as well as some of the weapon items that went along with it. Let's go ahead and start adding our weapon and our first person controller to our scene. So, first thing we need is the first person controller. We're going to head on over to our assets, and we'll navigate over to standard assets and character, and we'll go ahead and drag the FP controller, which is the capsule looking thing. Remember, you need to lift it above the ground in order for it to recognize that it's falling to the ground. If it's through the ground, it will not detect collision, and it will continue falling down to the endless pit. Alright, with that dragged into our scene, we should just be able to press play, and there we go. Alright, so I've got this crosshair here, and probably don't have that there. I forgot to take that out. It's very simple to add. Simply, let's just go ahead and go to our assets, and we'll find our HUD GUI. We will select the crosshair image, which is a PNG file that I created in Photoshop with a transparent background, a simple picture of a crosshair. All we do is we select it, we come over here to GameObject, create other, and we choose the GUI texture. What this will do is it will take this image, it will turn it into a GUI texture and place it in the center of your screen. That GUI texture will then become an item called GUI texture. You can rename it, which I have done here, to crosshair. And then when you select it here in your hierarchy list, your parameters will come up here in your inspector, including the component for the GUI texture, which shows that your texture 2D is the crosshair. We can access this component through script by calling its name, GUI texture, and then of course accessing any of these variables over here. But for now, that's perfectly fine. For other items like health and lives that you plan on using as GUI, you would do the same thing. The only difference is you would change their position. Okay, my position for this camera is set, or for the GUI object is set to 0.5 x 0.5 y, which centers it right in the screen. If we wanted it to be to the right, it's going to go up to 1, and then if we wanted to go up to the top, it's going to be a 1 on the y. So anything between 0 and 1 will give you the value you need to place your item, i.e. if you want to put it to the top right over here, it would be like 0.9 to the x and then 0.9 to the y right here. And I would put it right, almost close enough to the edge here that it would be in the corner. Alright, so that's how I did that. Let's go ahead and add our weapon now. So adding the weapon, well, before we add the weapon, we need to make a weapon cam. Unfortunately, because we're using the player controller, the camera on the controller and the collision on the controller override everything in the scene. So the controller's collision will not, the collision on the weapon, however, will not show. You actually see initially the weapon going through objects, and we call that clipping. And what we can do is we can control the way the objects are drawn on top of each other by creating multiple cameras. We'll do this later on and make a mini cam, but for now we're going to use this to draw the gun camera over top of the scene items. Okay, so in order for us to do that, we need to duplicate the gun cam. It's very simple. Right click on the main camera, create a duplicate. Okay, the duplicate camera we're going to rename so we know the difference between the two. We'll call this weapon cam. This works for all types of weapons. It does not just pertain to gun weapons. You can use this for swinging weapons. If you have fists and you want the fist to show, then you need to use this same technique here. Okay, so weapon cam. We're going to go to the weapon cam's inspector properties, and we're just going to change a few things. We're going to start here with the skybox clear flags. We're going to change that to depth only. Okay, this camera does not need to render anything other than the depth. The culling mask, right now it's rendering everything. We can say, hey, let's not render everything. In fact, we're going to render only a specific layer. I created this layer. You can create a layer on your own by simply coming up to the layer option up here, edit layer, and then find an empty slot, name it. I'll do weapon cam this time. All right, there, layer's created. Simply just head back to our weapon cam down here, open up our camera script, and now back to our culling mask. You simply want to choose nothing first, and then we only want to show the weapon cam, okay? So the weapon cam will be selected here. Remember, this is the weapon camera, so we're showing just the weapon camera. Projection, keep as it is. We're going to change the depth from 0 to 1. Drawing the depth at 1 makes this object or this camera show on top. So it's kind of like putting a layer on top of another layer. Okay, this camera layer now lays over and shows the layer called weapon. So this camera is now set. This is ready to display our weapon. Let's get our weapon and let's set up our weapon so that it can go, so that its layer is the same as the camera's layer that is showing it. So we're gonna go to the assets and we'll go ahead and find our weapon under the models. You might have a different setup here. I have weapons and here's my blaster. I'll go ahead and drag my blaster onto the screen. Remember, this can be any type of weapon. It could be something that swings. It does not necessarily have to be the blaster. Now, just so that I'm not even gonna mess with its transforms, I'm not even gonna move it yet. I'm just gonna start adjusting the prefab that comes with this blaster. I don't really like having it all grouped up like this. I really only need the poly surface. So I'm gonna drag the poly surface out of the group, okay? I'm gonna wait until my marker shows a line, and when it shows the line, I know that I'm putting the item in between and not inside or nesting it, okay? So I need to put it like that. I'm gonna let go, and it's gonna say, yeah, we're going to lose the prefab. Yes, it's exactly what I wanna do. This is my weapon. It is not nested in anything. It is clearly right here on its own. This blaster thing we can get rid of by just simply deleting. And we still have our poly surface over here, which is still our weapon. It's still visible. It is got a mesh render, a transform, and it's got a texture. So if you want to make a texture for it or whatnot, you'll still be able to do all that. All right, so next thing we want to do is rename this and then nest this inside of our weapon camera. So we will rename and we'll call this weapon. And we're going to leave it where it is. Watch this little neat trick I picked up here. Inside of our weapon camera, we're going to nest this weapon. So let's find the weapon. Let's go ahead and close all that up. Weapon cam, weapon. We're going to drag the weapon right onto the weapon cam, making it a child of the weapon cam. All right. Now we're going to select the weapon itself, and we're going to zero it out. And what that will do is that will put it as a child 000 of the mob, automatically centering it and getting it all set up for our FPS game. Now, if we were to look at our game right now, our weapon is right in the middle. It's easy fix. Move it forward, move it down a bit, and move it to the left a bit. Check your game. That looks awesome. So there's my weapon. It's nicely set. Last thing we should do though is in our weapon camera, so we don't see all these errors. Our main camera is going to hold all of our GUI and flare and audio. So the only things we should do is take those things out of our weapon cam. So I'm going to select my weapon camera here, and I'm going to right click on GUI layer and remove it. I'm going to right click on flare layer and remove it. I'm going to keep the mouse look. I'm going to right click on audio listener and remove it. So we have mouse look and the camera and its transform.